Great to see so many returning folks, names and faces. If you want to open up the chat, let us know where you're joining from today. Keep the chat open. We'll be using that throughout the call to allow you to ask questions of our guest. Got a great guest lined up who we'll introduce in a moment. But first, let me introduce who we are at I4CP. We're the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research firm. We discover the people practices that drive high performance. We define that by four fairly standard business metrics: revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. And in all of our HR human capital research, we're always looking to see those practices that differentiate high-performing companies from low performers. We do large quantitative studies in all areas of HR and look at what the top quartile of companies do differently than that lower quartile, and then provide that out in reports, infographics, case studies, and more to our member organizations. You see here just a small sampling of who makes up the I4CP member community. So a special welcome to anyone on the call today from one of our many members. If you'd like to learn more about membership, just drop a note to I4CP through the website or to any I4CP employee, and we'd be happy to share more. You see here membership spans across very large organizations like Amazon, Nike, 3M, Microsoft, and others, as well as some smaller organizations. They also span across all industry and market verticals. We've got a growing cohort of unicorn startup companies and more. So again, feel free to reach out to learn more about what membership entails. And I believe Zeta has put the link for that over in the chat. My name is Thomas Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP. And today my co-host is my colleague, Lorrie Lykins, our Vice President of Research and Executive Editor. Good morning, Lorrie.
Hi, Tom. Great to see you in Zeta.
Great to be with you. Want to note a couple of things before we get to our conversation with our special guest for today. We do meet every week. Next Practices Weekly is the apt name. You see the guests coming up there on the right, April 18th, the 25th, and May 2nd. We've got our own Rob Cross, Senior VP of Research, coming next week on the 18th. And then we've got two banks represented on April 25th and May 2nd, Vanessa Lawrence from Bank of Montreal, and then two folks from Citi. We also have some calls less frequently, not every week, but once a month or so for our friends in the APAC and EMEA regions. So Europe, Middle East, Asia, Australia, and so on. If you've got global colleagues that live in those regions where the time zone would be better suited, we have those calls at appropriate times for them, covering a lot of the same topics: culture, DE&I, learning and development, talent acquisition, and more. Just scan the QR code, get the information, share it with those colleagues. Or if you yourself are maybe joining us from Europe right now, glad to have you with us. But if you'd like to join the EMEA events at a better time for you, you're more than welcome to do that as well. With that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Lorrie, to introduce today's special guest and facilitate today's conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. So no preamble. I'm going to introduce Bob Toohey. Bob, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great to be here. How are you, Lorrie?
Great. We're thrilled that we were able to snag you. So Bob has served as Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer at Allstate since 2022. Before joining Allstate, he led Pymetrics. I know a lot of you are probably familiar with Pymetrics. It's a company that uses AI behavioral assessments to help companies build diverse, high-performing teams. And prior to this, he was the Chief People Officer for Verizon Media. He was responsible for global human resource strategy and ops for 14,000 employees across 12 countries. And he was also president of Verizon Business, which was a $15 billion business unit serving customers in over 80 countries. So Bob, you've had an impressive career. Can you just share a little bit more with us about your career journey?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. It's been, I've had great opportunities, and I think, listening to you kind of talk about it, one of the things that people always ask me is I've pretty much spent half my career on the business side and half my career on the HR side. And one simple reason, I think if we get the talent and the people part right, businesses run amazingly well. But as we all know, that's not easy. And we're sitting here on this call, and every week you have calls and we learn things. And that's where my passion is. How do you really make a business run really well through people. And over the years, I started out in finance. I was an auditor for my career for many years, which was a great experience. I had the chance to work in different business sets in technology and media. And then, as you mentioned, inside Pyometrics, where I worked with a great team and super smart people, where, now where we are in the world, I learned a bunch about AI and how you think about AI and how we use those tools. And so all brought different experiences, and it's been great. So, and I love just it's been great being on the business side and then coming onto the HR side, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, and how I think about HR and how we could show up to the business.
Can you tell us a little bit about how HR is structured at Allstate? This is a conversation we have all the time. What's your HR structure look like? Can you share that with
Yeah,
us?
sure. So we're a global company. We have about 56,000 employees worldwide. And one of the things we have a passion about is, when I joined HR in 2 years ago, Allstate's gone on this big transformation journey. It's really taken the whole company, if you think about a 100-year history, shifting it to digital, just like all companies, changing the way we work, changing how things are organized. And one key component of that is, how does HR show up and how do we help the business take that forward? So the way we're organized around that is, I have probably not much different than most folks, shared services model to kind of deliver many of the services you need and out to the customers. We have OTAs. I call our business partners, as most of us know, organizational talent advisors. Thought there is their number one priority is put talent in the right seat, in the right place at the right time. How do we help the business sit with them and consult forward and make sure they're doing what they need to do, and not just putting the talent, but how does the work get done? How do we connect work around the globe? How do we help them increase productivity? And then we have COEs who support all that. And I think of the COEs as the product team. So one of the things we talk about a lot is, we want to deliver our services as a product. So your COEs, our center of excellence, would be around compensation, benefits, learning and development, hiring. So our whole recruiting team. If you think about those, we look at those as products. And I think an opportunity we're really kind of leaning into is, how do we show up and deliver a customer experience that's like anything else you have as a consumer grade experience? And would our customers buy our services? Oftentimes we run into the problem of, we need to do it because it's a process that we need to do. We need to do performance evaluations. We need to run compensation. We need to do benefits, the things that happen. But what does our customer need? What would they buy as a service? And we should deliver that thinking with that mindset. So we're really kind of leaning into this. HR as a product is what we like to refer to that as.
Can we talk a little bit, Bob, about employee listening? We've done a lot of research over the years, especially since the pandemic here at I4CP, on the topic of really understanding employee sentiment, employee listening. What mechanisms or structure does Allstate have in place to really gather that information from your employees?
Yeah, great question. I'll do a plug, because I remember when I was first interviewing, the team, both the leadership and the HR team at Allstate, has done a great job in listening, if you will, to employees. I know we're going to talk about this. A big event was starting with how do we want to work from home? What do we want to do post-pandemic? And a lot of the feedback on where we ended up was from employees. So we feel, going back to HR as a product, listening to our customers, our employees, helping design things around our employees and with our employees is going to get us to a better place. So we're very passionate about that. We'll do our annual surveys that many of us do, but oftentimes what we really want to lean into is doing more pulse check surveys. How do we check in on things? How do we check in on point in times? We all, you go out to a restaurant, you walk out and you get the smiley face button. Can we do something like that? Are you smiling? Are you frowning? So how do we get quick insights real time? I'd like to get away from the broad one time a year survey and get more into a ongoing, on real time survey, but we're building into that, but very passionate about that. If that kind of gives you a line of sight to that. You can't build good products without customer input.
For sure. And I know, one of the unique things that you're doing at Allstate that I think is really critically important, and I wish more organizations were doing, and that is really co-creating with your workforce, especially when it comes to something like work design, rather than just sending out some edict mandating this is the way things are going to be, and there's not going to be any conversation. Is that just about your culture? Is that just who you've decided you want to be?
Yeah, I think it's embedded. I mean, Allstate has been doing that for years. I mean, that's been in the culture of Allstate. I mean, I'll just start with, I think the foundation, they have a great shared purpose.
Hello, how you doing?
But living into that, getting feedback from our customers, getting feedback both externally, we do that every day, but internally with our employees. The company is us. We like to say it's about us and how we create that company and culture. And, you know, you think about how culture evolves. Culture is not a sign on the wall, right? Culture it's us. It's how we work, how we do things, how we operate. And, you know, it's not easy, but we got to kind of make that red thread go through wherever we need it across the company. And we do that through listening and through surveys and taking input from our team.
Yeah, and I think that message, it seems so simple, but it's so important. As you know, we're going to ask employees this question. We're actually going to respond to the information that they're giving us, rather than just gather the feedback and then do
Right.
nothing with it.
If I can
Yeah.
add one thing, Lorrie, I'm sorry. And to that point, that's what makes it hard to do surveys. We always have it. We talk internally a lot. Don't ask if you don't want the answer, but we need the answer. So you have to be willing to acknowledge when you ask for feedback, and you may get the feedback, but have to not take it. And so then you got to tell people why you didn't choose to change it. So
Right.
I always, you know, this is a passion of mine, and we talk this a lot about this as a team. How do we tell the why? You know, I think that's what we miss often is when we talk to customers, you know, you think of anything we do. If you just help people understand why, because everybody, let's face it, you can do a survey and there's always going to be people who don't agree or don't like it or have feedback, but we're not going to be able to please everybody 100% of the time, all the time.
Yeah.
That's the balance that you're getting to, is how do we manage that? And I think a lot of it is just be transparent and talk about the why.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to dig in a little deeper today on this conversation about, you know, work design at Allstate. Before we really dive into the details of that, we want to do a quick poll to just get a baseline, get a picture of where everybody on the call is in terms of what's your current work model look like, what's your policy. So are you on site full time? Are you more of a fixed hybrid? And we talk about fixed hybrid in the context of these are the days you will be in the office. So for example, some organizations have folks in the office, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everyone works from home. Monday, Friday, that's a fixed hybrid, flexible hybrid. So hit the button and let us know where you are with that, and we'll go from there.
We can
Yeah,
stay on this all afternoon, Lorrie.
Yeah, we'll definitely be spending a good amount of time on this to learn what you all have done at Allstate. The votes are coming in. I can see
I'd
them.
like to
And
learn from everybody else.
yeah, well, hopefully we'll have some questions too from the chat. I'm going to give folks another 5 seconds to respond here. Bob, while we do that, there was one question from Eileen in the chat. Back to when you said your HR transformation to a product-driven organization, how long of a process was that?
Well, we're in the middle of the process, so I'll give you the top line, Eileen. It's one of the things we've done is we're overhauling. We have a multi-year program going on right now around org transformation. It's got about 5 different components, and the first one is build the foundation. So one of the things we've done is really invest and overhaul all of our platforms and technology and tools, which is going to allow us to do a lot of the things we need to do. So we're consolidating from multiple systems around the globe to one, and we're bringing that together. And we call that we're going to refer to that as the employee digital platform. It's sitting on Workday. There's other tools around that, but I think that's going to let us have much more of a product-driven approach. So that launch is mid-year. And then as we go forward, we're going to start to see a lot more of this. And I'd say in earnest, we'd probably be living into that model fully probably near the end of the year, but we're doing it right now as a team. If you think how you build products, we're doing the same thing. We're just building the muscle to think about it from ideation all the way through your go-to-market launch and into the field so that people are ready for that. So there's a whole process that we put in place. So it's in progress. We're probably 50% there.
Great. No, that's fair. And as everyone can see from the survey results here, very few on this call have on-site full-time as their primary work model policy. Fully remote, a little bit higher, only 12% though. Flexible hybrid, clearly the most common, probably not surprisingly. I think, Lorrie, we've done lots of polls on this over the past couple of years, and flexible hybrid comes out strong. Fixed hybrid, though, I feel like maybe in the past was a little bit higher than it is now. Lorrie, do you
Yeah.
recall?
Yes, it was actually. So yeah,
maybe
looks
more
like
of a shift from fixed hybrid to flexible hybrid. And then these don't fully capture every case. These are broad buckets. So thank you to Amy and Shannon, who gave a little more nuance and over in the chat to what they're seeing at their organization.
yeah. So Bob, the reason why we wanted to have you on, well, there are many reasons, but the big headline that grabbed our attention was the Fortune article about what you were doing at Allstate. Specifically, the data that you shared in this Fortune article, which was once you decided that you were going to really invest in adopting flexible work, your ability to attract talent jumped by 23%, and you've sort of divested some of your real estate holdings.
Mm-hmm.
All of this in response to the desire that your employees express to have flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to talk about that. We will include a link to this Fortune article, but this headline, we all just saw it and said, oh my gosh, Allstate cut half its office space after adopting flexible work. Job applications soared by 23%, with large increases among women and people of color.
Yep.
Wow. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. And like I said, we could talk about this the whole time. And I'll start with the biggest top line. We're living into it. We're learning as we go. And that's what we tell our employees. This is a journey that we're on together. And I'll go back to the beginning. We did, the team surveyed all employees near the end of the pandemic and said, we've been doing this work at home thing for a while. How do you guys all like it? Resoundingly, I think 90+% said, let's keep this same operating model because it's been working. Now, there's a lot of folks who will talk about it and that we say it's been working because everybody did it. So as you come out of this pandemic and as we kind of move forward into this, we decided, management said, let's live into this. We're going to do this. You mentioned cutting 50% of your real estate. I think the biggest sign was there was a massive campus that's been the headquarters for forever. I mean, out in Northbrook, Illinois, and the campus is gone. They sold it. It's not only sold, it's like rebuilt. It's a warehouse now. And so when you have something as big as that to kind of impact the culture and change, you all of a sudden, this is real. Yeah. So I think we all kind of started to say, now where do we go and how do we do this? The first year kind of in earnest where we kind of lived into this, we just continued the same journey. And I think this past 18 months, probably a year, really, we really started to kind of hone in on how do we live into this so it's sustainable? Because I think all of us are doing the work from home, but we all read the press. We all are getting the same. Who thinks you need to be in the office? Who thinks you need to be not in the office? You have all these different variations. And we basically said, we've been a distributed workforce. We're global forever. So some of this isn't new. Some of this is we just have to kind of operate and think a little differently. Many managers never had all their direct reports sitting in the same office. If you think we had distributed workforce, many companies do. So it was almost, we had to get our mindset on, this is just a new way of working. So we kind of talk about it. We want to make work anywhere. We want to live into flexibility. We chose not to have rules, and we're really depending on leadership to drive this forward. And what I mean by that is we have our leadership, and we want our leadership who runs teams. And you figure there's about 800 people between directors and above, but you have managers also who are leaders, managers of people. But we got to start with a foundation to say each organization, function, area of responsibility, as we refer to it, or the market-facing businesses have to think about what's right for them. And so that's where we really started to lean into this. I'll use HR. How HR wants to operate is very different than marketing. So, and how marketing wants to operate and how often they need to be in the office is very different than our claims organization. So we kind of went to it's not one size fits all. And we want to make sure people start thinking about that. So we started really looking at, people look at utilization, we look at where people are going. And as we kind of leaned into this, we really kind of landed on we went back out and got input from employees, because then we had folks coming in who didn't want to come in. What kind of office space do you want if you want to come in? What kind of tools do you really need at home if you want to come in? How do we make this work together? So we started getting more input from folks. And as we got that input, we landed on a way that we call, we'll call it our flexible workspace. We picked 15 locations. We call them pods. Got away from this office concept, and I'll get to why we said pods. And we said we're going to live into 15 pods. We may add more if we need them. And they were designed by where people are, how many people are around that area, its massive employee population, and where they need to connect. And we own a lot of that real estate. And what we're doing is we redesign that, and we're going to redesign as we go forward. We have several done, and we have 3 types of workspaces that we got from employees. If you think about it, you have a cafe space. Where do I want to connect and have some food and get together? And picture an open cafe. I think the picture you have now, that's not that one. That's the exercise one we did. So you have an open cafe, but that's where people want to come and be together and just collaborate, socialize, get to know each other, may do work. There's workspaces. Then we have an area that we're going to call library. The library is, you still need quiet space. You still want to go do work, but the days of the whole entire office is made of offices and cubes is over. So that's picture that you can kind of envision the way we thought about offices before. And then you have collaboration space. Have the right conference rooms, have the right spaces, have whiteboards, have tools that people need. So we've kind of designated 3 types of areas in an office to say that's how we want folks to come and how they get their work done. And oftentimes what we're seeing too is people are coming in and out of the offices, but they're coming in at different hours and different times. The day of 9 to 5 that I mentioned earlier, have a mindset shift. Well, coming to the office at 8 or 9 and then leaving at 5 or 6 and just kind of saying that's my day. You might say I did a bunch of work at home because I didn't need to be around everybody and it was focused time. And I needed to come in and have a meeting around collaboration, and purposeful work is what we like to say. Come for purposeful work. Don't have people come and just sit on Zoom all day. That's not going to get us to where we need to go to. That then leans back to where the managers have to really help us help each other get better at this. So how do they think about it? So I'll stop there for a minute. I can really start unpacking this and talk. There's so many different ways I can go with this about how we help leaders, how we think about our space. The other thing we're doing, there's areas that we don't have the 15 I mentioned. We're now also testing what we're calling flex space, which we would partner with a company to just say, how do we help employees that may have 200 people in an area and they say, 50 of them want to get together. We need a spot they can go to. So we're trying to make it where we want to make it simple and easy for people to connect, get together, collaborate, do purposeful work, have social time too, but then they're all going to probably be back at home and working. So, and we're seeing early stages, positive signs of this. And what I love is when areas decide their own rules. Like we have an office in Charlotte, they have their own thing. Thursdays has become their day. If you go in there on a Thursday, it's a buzzing office. If you go in on Monday, it's less buzzing. But they created that. We didn't send out a note and say every Thursday you must come to the office. That to me is success when you start to see that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would imagine, there are so many nuances to this because the message, the underlying message, I believe, is we want you to have agency. We want you to be autonomous in terms of making decisions about what works best for you and what works best for your family. I know that a lot of working parents are really, really struggling with mandates from, employees are just saying you must be in the office. You must move back to corporate headquarters within 6 months, or you need to, leave the organization. But are you tracking how, in terms of, are you gathering data around what this is doing in terms of job satisfaction, performance, productivity?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are, it's interesting. I'll hit one. We do not track who's coming in and out, because there was another article, they asked that same question. So I want to clarify, because a lot of times people say we do track the utilization of the office.
Right.
And that's because we go back to, we reduced office. We're not going to have an office that's X size if we know it's only utilized 30%. So how do it's a hard balance. So we're really looking at office utilization. Are people connecting? Are people coming together? And is the office being utilized?
Mm-hmm.
We're not tracking by name to say, Lorrie, how come you weren't in the office these 2 days? That's a different type. So it's more around utilization and getting the best output. And then what we're doing is, the team that runs this, we're asking people when they go in, is it working? Does it need to be modified? What's working? So we're tracking that. You mentioned productivity. This is one that we get this question a lot. And I think we all are challenged with this. I often say, however you measured productivity before all this, measure it the same way. looking at you isn't measuring productivity. We know the projects we have, we know the work, we know the timeframes. And I think we have a sense of, is it getting better or worse? And that's up to the leaders and managers. We also have, you can track general results of areas. Obviously, if you have a call center, you can track, calls. You have a sales team, you can track sales. But it's the work that's not so easily done that way that people always ask, how are you measuring productivity? And I think it comes down to managers and is to work harder. And some managers find it that they need their teams to be together to be more productive. We have a creative team. Allstate has a great creative, and you see all of our ads. They love to be together. That's because the type of work they do, they got to be together.
Right.
If you told them to stay home all day, they would self-select and say, we're not going to be as productive. So that's a measure going back to the one size fits all. I think the caution as we measure, one thing that, there's no perfect way to measure this is, how do you really measure? How do you know employees are feeling engaged? How do you really know? We do a survey and they tell us they are. We did find out that one thing we've learned in this is they feel direct connection to their current function. They can use better connection crosswire. And so that was an opportunity for us to say, how do we help? So we're trying to help leaders and we're trying to help organizations. Is there ways we're going to put in tools? Like if I'm going to have the HR team go to an office in Arizona one day and they're going to all come in, it'd be nice to figure out, can I get other groups in there so they can meet other groups and be together? So that's an opportunity that we're working through, is how do we create that cross function collaboration and make sure people are just simply connecting.
There are a couple of questions have come in through the chat,
saw
and
that,
some of
yeah.
them are on the agenda that we'll be getting to shortly. I know, but one was a quick follow-up, sort of specific to the office real estate. How did you go around figuring out? There were two people asking this. The utilization, I assume it was a mix of best guess in terms of size of the different types of spaces, and then maybe modifications over time if some things are over or underutilized.
Yeah. Two ways we looked at that. We took the stats of, because people badge in and out, so we work closely with the real estate team. They see all this. So we just got data of what's being utilized. Now I'll go back. Some offices weren't utilized because they weren't set up for the future. So one of the things we're seeing is, as we make these modifications, now I'm going to come in, because if you're going to drive to the office and see people, you want to actually make it a space that you can do things in. The other thing we did is we looked at our employees and where they were. So we kind of took a map, and if you think of just view a map and see where are the offices that have the most employees around them within some of them are 50-mile radius. And it's basically kind of self-selected that these are the areas that seem to be, and it's equivalent to where we were pre-pandemic, but there's some new ones. There's some areas that we found that we have a good cohort of employees that we might need to put in office. So we're looking at that. So we're going to start off with flex space. And then if it's the utilization is what we think, and they think they have a need, we'll just then get our own office. So it's both badging in and out, looking at where employees sit in relation to the office, and then survey data. So if you kind of take those three factors, we then make decisions. And if you weren't one of the 15 pods, it doesn't mean you're important. We have other offices. It just may mean we're not going to renovate it and do all that, and it's a smaller subset. But
Right.
it's where we want to just put the cohorts to start.
Any other questions you want to hit, Tom, from the chat?
No, I think we're good for now, because I think we're going to hit on culture and collaboration here in the normal flow.
Okay, I did want to ask you, Bob, about talent attraction. I work closely with our talent acquisition board, and there's a lot of discussion on this topic around flexible work models and talent brand and what the impact is. Are you able to connect these metrics in terms of talent attraction? Because I know we saw in the article 23% spike. Is
Yeah.
it still continuing to be a boon to your employer brand?
Yes. If Sean, our head of recruiting, was on, he would simply say, we do not have a candidate pool problem.
Wow.
And I haven't heard that in 30 years. I mean,
Right?
and he'll say all the time, his team with the talent management team are really focused on, we can get the candidates. Now, how do we keep them to stay? How do we grow them in the organization? How do we help them connect? And how do we make them part of the culture? That's
Yeah.
where our opportunity is. Hiring, I think if you just call 20 of our recruiters, I think the first thing they would tell you is our flexible model has made the inflow of candidates much easier, and people will listen, people want to talk, and they're very interested. Because you said it earlier, people have lives, they're trying to figure this out. It's a different world, but well, I know we're going to get to this. The challenge then is how do we make sure the culture sustains itself as you start to do
Right,
that?
right. And the bottom line, we all know, is people want to work for organizations that treat them like trustworthy adults, right?
Yes. Yes,
It seems
I
really,
couldn't agree more.
yes, it seems really simple, but it seems to be a really tough nut to crack for some organizations that are just intractably wedded to this idea that we don't have a culture if we're not in the office.
Yeah. And you know what, there's people on the phone. Everyone's here is HR professionals. And I talk to a lot of folks. It really comes down to what you want. What Allstate's doing, it may not work for 10 other companies. But I think that's what people have to decide. What's the culture you want? What type of workforce do you have? I don't think every company in the world is going to do this.
Right.
Some companies are going to say, we want our folks in the office. But what I'm hoping we all do, just be clear and transparent, to your point. I think we're
Yeah.
still in this mode that people aren't sure. They don't want to say. They're trying all these ways of doing it. And it's okay to say, I mean, we've said it. I mean, if we decided tomorrow we wanted everyone in the office, we know we'll have a culture impact. We know we'll have a talent change, but if that's a decision somebody wanted, which we're not making. So
Mhm.
you just need to know the impact. I talk to friends and other colleagues and peers that they're making those decisions. They know there's an impact. So they may say, we want everyone to be in this one office. That's okay. It's not a bad thing. I think we've kind of turned the office into a bad place. And that's what we're kind of getting to is it's not a bad place. Every time we get people together, there is never a day I don't see people coming together in an office that are like, this is great. I wish we did this more. And then our answer is, well, go ahead.
Yep.
We're just not going to tell you to. And they're doing it themselves. To your point, everyone needs to be treated like a trusted adult. They know what they need to get done. And it's our obligation to have a two-way street and make it work for the business and make it work for the employee.
Yep. So let's definitely dive in a little bit deeper into culture practices. What are you doing to maintain culture, given that you have this mix of hybrid and remote employees?
Yeah. I'll just hit a bunch of things. Nothing that's going to be new to anybody on the phone, but we continue communication. We have a great communication team. We are always communicating constantly and trying to keep that thread across the company. But again, we were always distributed. So we're living into that. We're spending time putting more investment into training leaders. People have always had distributed workforce, but this is a little different in how you lead, how you think about doing work asynchronously. What can you do in the office? How do you create purposeful work? How do you manage and lead your teams when you may not be together for 2 months? So there's work we're doing around that, which helps maintain the culture, because I believe leaders help drive that culture. Employees come to work to talk to their manager. They want to look at that trusted advisor, and we need to do a good job of helping that person do a better job. That's one. The other is we spend time doing, we always do our quarterly meetings and monthly meetings for managers and leaders with their teams. So we create an all-employee meeting. We do office visits. We try to connect people around the world and have people get out and talk to folks. And then I think we also do a lot around just, if you think about other things, social development, those are things that bring people together and help people connect. But the culture isn't just about people connecting. It centers around, we have a very strong shared purpose and a foundation of how we work and how we operate together. That foundation helps us kind of maintain that culture because it's an expectation. I'd say if I had the chance to ask everybody the question, the thing we always say is, how do you maintain the culture? It's great if you have an average years of service of 9 years, but if you're hiring 5,000 or 10,000 people a year, the culture eventually evolves. So how do we keep that? Because I think we all kind of would say, oh, when I go to the office every day, it just happened. I saw it. I felt it. So we're trying to bring that authenticity, and I feel it even though I'm home. How do I help? So we're doing different kind of programs. Sometimes we have different cohorts of organizations where we may hire somebody and they may need to be trained, and they'll do it in the office for 6 weeks. And then they kind of graduate and they work from home, but it helped them immediately learn the culture and how we operate. So a lot of different things I said there. And, but I don't think there's one thing that solves it. You got to kind of have all of these threads come together.
If I can just jump in real quick, thanks for
Yeah.
making that last point. Anne had asked that in the chat about more junior employees or those that are just initially onboarding. How do you inculcate the culture to them?
Yeah.
If they're fully remote or strongly hybrid? So
Yeah, I bet you a lot of us on the phone. I mean, I remember when I was an intern, I graduated, I went to work, but I was in an office every day, and that's one of the things we're really thinking through. And and we're trying different things. We're trying, meetups, we're trying buddy systems when you hire somebody. How do you create, but it's that just learning of what it's like to be in a meeting with everybody in the room. How do I, the walk down the hall and the cup of coffee with a manager that you normally wouldn't see. One of the things we do is we encourage leaders to just have an open time where you just open up your Teams or Zoom and you're just there and let people walk by and just stop in if they want. It's different, but we're just trying different things to see what works and get people to connect.
That's great. Couple of pain points that I think everybody at I4CP, our colleagues, have heard about in the last couple of years is this disconnect between, well, we're saying one thing, but actually when people get enrolled, they're finding another, kind of like that candidate and employee experience not being in alignment. But what I mean specifically is roles that are, posted and they say flexible or hybrid. And then when people get enrolled, they're finding out that's actually not the case because the manager is just not okay with it.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, how did you manage that change management? I know you were already distributed, but in terms of letting go of office space, moving to this is officially who we are and where we are. How did you manage that change with your managers and leaders who were maybe a little bit hesitant about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say, I think it was, I'm not going to make it like it was easy, but I think the fact that it was being done for 2 and 3 years, most managers were ready to say, let's keep going. I think where I see that it's not they want to change the hiring practice, is what we just talked about a minute ago. How do we help managers bring on that new employee? How do we help managers? I think that's where they see some of that strain, and that's where we got to put investment and help them. And that's helping in the change to this. But I haven't seen where we have managers, it wasn't like they reacted, don't do this. It was more, how do I do it? Help me. That was more the change management we had versus I can't do this. I will say, go back to the beginning, having these agreements by the functions helps managers, because I think that's where we want the leaders and the managers. If you think about an organization, if a leader decides, I think our function should be in the office 2 days a week, and I'd like everybody to do that, well, he's engaging that or she in that whole process. And then you're kind of making the managers part of that versus the company has one rule. So I think that's helped us. The fact that I think we would have had what you talked about if we came out and said 2 days a week, everyone in the office, and 3 days a week at home. But I think we're giving managers more ability to help that decision. One other thing I'll throw out that I was thinking about, we did a test last year and we did it again this year, and it was in one article. To get to right what you said, we don't know the answers, but managers who are sitting managing their employees every day have better ideas. So we basically allocated a budget. We invested $10 million and said, we're going to allocate it to all the managers. We took all the friction out of the system and we said, you decide how you want to get your teams together. Because, one of the constraints we had was budget. My team doesn't want to come in. What do I do? So we gave them the tools and let them go. And the only thing we asked them to do was to make sure you tell us what you did and what you learned, and should we do it and repeat it, or should we not do it and did it fail? And so we're actually testing and learning with managers of things they're trying to get people together. And we did it last year, and now we're doing it again this year. And that's another way we're learning from basically the customer and making them own part of this with us.
That sounds fantastic. Tom is our in-house subject matter expert on learning and development. He works really closely with our Chief Learning and Talent Officer board. Tom, I know you were curious about L&D with this work model. Did you want to ask a question about that?
Yeah, Bob, just what's the current state of L&D practices, given you've got this mix of hybrid? I assume, I'll just say our research found that, early in the pandemic, a lot of companies moved to virtual instructor-led, obviously couldn't gather in person. It became almost 100% for a lot of roles, but that's very much pivoted back towards a sort of a sweet spot where there's more virtual training than there was prior to the pandemic, but certainly getting people together for in-person training of various kinds is one intentional reason to gather in person. So is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, we're definitely using in-person training where needed and where it makes sense, not just to say, come get trained. So those collaborative classes where you have cross teams, we definitely would use that to say it's a good opportunity. And I'll use an example. Sometimes teams come together to do strategic work or they're innovating around a product, whatever it may be. They may tack on 4 hours of training after that. They may self-select,
Right.
let's do something since we have everybody together. The reverse is we have courses and programs that we would bring people together. We do a lot of virtual training. We're very much so looking to the future to say, how do we do more of that micro in the flow of work training? We're going to leverage AI much more. So I think we have an opportunity to not focus on bringing people back to do training in person. How do we actually change the entire way you're trained? Because I think this opened up a door and gave us that opportunity. So we're excited. We have a lot of different things we're looking ahead to do there. But to answer your first question, we definitely use this as a chance to make it one of those, I'll call it, I said, purposeful work. Well, learning together is purposeful. It's good. It's a good idea to get people together. It seems to make a lot of sense and people enjoy that.
Yeah, glad to hear you're leaning into some other trends though, like AI's role in L&D and also learning in the flow of work, micro learning, those kinds of things. So
the
good.
AI, I would love to hear more and talk to you some point. I mean, we have a big aspiration there. I think if you go back to HR as a product, we have such an opportunity as professionals to change the entire way the ecosystem works, not just in learning and everything we do. I know this isn't an AI conversation, but I know there's a lot of questions of AI, but there's a lot of opportunities. I think if we harness the power of what can be, I think the sky's the limit for how HR can really change the dynamic of how organizations work.
I agree. And that segs us into one of the questions that we wanted to save just a couple of minutes for, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but sort of.
Oh, this is
What do
gonna be
you
a good one.
see as the future of HR? I mean, my ears perked up when you said the office spaces weren't built for the future, and I was thinking, what is your ideal office space that's built for the future? But more broadly, what do you see as the future of HR in terms of critical trends that you're expecting?
Yeah, I think well, I think ultimately, I think all of us need to become product centric. I think all of us need to think about, rather than we need to do it because we're supposed to, more the business needs it and what's it going to change. And I don't say that as I mean, it's just been the profession. There's a lot of things that happen so how do you change us to, we're not just a service to the organization, but you're delivering products and you're changing the way customers operate. I know everybody is driving to a customer experience, and I think that is definitely the change in HR. It's employees are customers. They make a deal with us, we make a deal with them, so we have an obligation together. How do you hold and how do you deliver? All of our customers as employees have a consumer grade life. They do things so easily. How do we make that, whether it's going to the office or everything you do on your job, that easy? And I think that's the next phase of where the world has to go with HR, because it's where the world is. We're catching up. And I think AI, technology, and I think that we have to embrace, all of our jobs are going to change and all of us have to learn every day. And I think that's a passion we all have to kind of feel. We always say inside Allstate, we want to build a learning organization. And that's because the world changes so fast. And how do we stay with that? But how do we make it an opportunity for all of us? And so I can pick any HR job that, I'll use one I use with the team, compensation professionals. That's where I grew up in HR. The power AI can do for a compensation professional, it doesn't mean their job goes away. How does their job shift?
Right.
What's that move towards? Versus sometimes we're like, oh, it's going to take my job away. I think we have an obligation to help people know what's the new opportunity to enhance your job because of that. And I think there's a whole conversation we can have around that. But does that help kind of give you I think it's product centric, customer centric, and I don't want it technology enabled, but the customer shouldn't feel the technology. It should just be the experience they have.
Oh, interesting. That's a
Be
really,
proactive. Like,
that's a
it should
really
happen
interesting
for me.
point.
Have a persistent life. Like when I get to work,
Right,
it knows certain things I have to do. Do it for me. Don't ask me to go look it up. Like there's so
right.
many things we have this term inside. We're trying to leapfrog where we can go. And we're having fun with it, but it's, you can't do everything, but there's I think a great opportunity and I think HR tends to say, and I think with all that, we have such a great opportunity as a profession to help organizations change. and to help organizations succeed. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that because we get caught up in the work we do every day. Talent's what makes an organization run. That's, it's a big obligation we all have. And I think we have a great opportunity collectively as a profession. So it's exciting, I think.
And speaking of talent, one of the questions that we like to ask as we wrap up our Next Practice Weekly conversations is, what do you look for in terms of somebody joining your team? What do you look for in a professional?
I'd say I just go down passion, perspective, a desire to learn, which all of those three things I think bring somebody who enables and wants to change, not wants to, but is comfortable with it. So because I think if you have passion, you have perspective, we can help you learn a lot and you can have endless possibilities. So I always kind of have that lens. And then I think I'll just click on, if I went down one level on that, product centric, customer centric, and how you think about things.
My audio glitched for just a quick second when you named that first word, and I'm glad you repeated it, the word passion. That's important. I thought for some reason it came through as fashion. And I was like, well, that's an interesting criteria for hiring HR
You're not going to get that from me.
Yeah, exactly.
My daughters would attest to that. I am not the fashion.
I'd never heard that one before. It looks like Nadia also. She also heard fashion.
No,
so
that's
funny.
Passion.
Oh, and Lisa,
Passionate
I wasn't the
perspective.
only one. Okay, excellent. They're pouring
If you
through.
were corduroy, you are out. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
No, believe me.
If I can also jump in, we had a couple of follow-ups on the L&D front that I asked you about. One was from Mega, leadership development. Would that be maybe one of the areas, as we've seen with a lot of organizations, where maybe there's a bit more leaning towards the in-person cohort training, or is a lot of that done online? Leadership development.
Leadership development, we actually just launched a cohort where we're doing experiential learning together, which is going great. The team's doing a great job. It's called Leading at Allstate. And we do that virtually, and that's more of just a subject, but we actually will do it in person also. So there's a mix. I think we do more leadership development when it comes to coaching teams and teams work. We like to do that in person. Right. So I'd say there's a mix. We don't have one or the other.
And then going back to both L&D, but also just the broader issue of supporting managers and helping them in this hybrid and flex world. How is any training or support resources provided on that? And I'm curious if I assume it's been all in-house developed because it's probably so nuanced and specific to your culture, or have you used any off-the-shelf vendors?
We kind of have a mix. We've developed a program in-house. We've taken some from vendors and kind of put that together. We have some small coaching cohorts that help people come together that are outside facilitators to help us in that area. So I'd say it's a mix. It's not there's never a one size fits all from an in-house and out-of-house. And I think the other is, one of the things we're trying to solve for is, how do we have that, and I'll go back to AI. What I'd like to envision is that those managers and leaders, once they take that, Leading at Allstate, they do some of these courses, how do we give them real-time on-demand coaching? And I'd like to see that done both with AI tools and a human. So how do I have this, I'm working through this issue, because there's some great tools out there for AI to do that with people, but I still think you need the human intervention when needed. So we're actually working right now to kind of blend those two. So then to me, it's coaching in the moment, help in the moment, versus, so you take these development courses, but then where's the sustainable help that you continue to get as you're moving on? And especially today, you're a manager, you have 100 employees and you're in Texas and they're all around the world, and it could be overwhelming. So we're looking at how do we embed that so it's, I'd like to say, just real time, anytime.
One other question that actually our colleague Judy maybe DM me here. One of the red lines through everything you've been saying today, your background coming from the business, is to treat HR as a service provider, to treat the employees in the company as customers, taking that product-centric approach. How do you, I think that some organizations, if that's a new concept, they might have a difficulty articulating that throughout HR, let alone throughout who you're then going to support. What are some great ways to, I don't know, message that or make that shift in philosophy?
Yeah. There's a couple there. First, I think I'll just try to hit a few quick ones. Anytime you're thinking of rolling out something, first ask, what's it going to do for the business? Start with the outcome you're trying to get, and then is it important to the business? And I think that starts to get you to think about as a product. I think usability and making it ease as the product and start really questioning those things. Why am I doing this? Is it simple? And is it going to help the business? And if you can kind of get those three questions and and I'll use a very simple one that everybody would relate to because we're debating it. I actually have a meeting later today. We ask our customers. So go back to what we said earlier, ask people. So talk to leaders, talk to managers, engage them in this. Performance management. We all think ratings, no ratings. There's all this debate about which one to do. Some HR folks believe in ratings, some don't. What's the manager need? What are we trying to accomplish with a performance rating? Pay people? You're trying to change the culture? You're trying to develop them? Do you want daily coaching? So it was a good example of us. You tend to get in it's that time of year, it's time to do annual ratings. But if you're on the other side of the table, you're not quite sure why you're doing this besides HR told you to. Right. So when you get into that conversation, I think it makes you have a different perspective with the business versus this is the way it should be. And I think that's the hardest thing for all of us to do because everyone on this call as a profession has their capabilities in one specific area in HR and you have a belief, but how do we help ourselves know what the business outcome is? And it's just a different conversation. That's a whole longer, happy to talk more about it. I can send you something that we're taking people through and it's a different way of thinking. And you're in the business and you run out of product. And sometimes I tell people, just look at how a product gets rolled out in a company. We should roll HR out the same way, same steps, same things. And I think sometimes we just skip all those and launch the program. Versus
another thing that product folks use, and Diane just asked this question as you were responding there, they use design thinking, they use hackathons, they use things like that. Is that stuff you've introduced to HR as well, those kind of models and philosophies?
We definitely have a whole design thinking group. We have an experience lab that we kind of take things through and test it with employees before it goes through. So those are two things that we do. We'll always get the ongoing feedback, but absolutely, we're embedding those right into the system. And as I said, we're trying, some of this is, we don't have every answer. It's where we want to get to. So we're building that out and we're getting there, but I think it'll feel probably more in the flow of work and our daily interactions, how we work in the next 6 to 12 months as we all get better at this. It's like, you just got to work at it.
Well, it's definitely intriguing a lot of folks in the chat. We've got about 3-4 minutes left. Lorrie, what other topics would you like to hit?
I just wanted to ask about connection and inclusion. I know that at one point, I believe last year, you were running pulse surveys specifically to gauge people's sense of connection and inclusion. And we're in the final phases right now of a major study that we're about to publish on high performing teams and the importance of connectivity and connected networks throughout the organization. So are you still pulse surveying your employees about their sense of connection and what are you learning?
We are, we're happy that we're still at the high watermark. And we do watch that all the time because it kind of goes back to what we talked about, productivity, culture, and the connections. If we see that start to slide, we got to get in front of that. But we are looking at that constantly, and that's kind of the key bar for us because it links to everything we talked about here. So we're still seeing very positive trends. I'll tell you, the one thing we do see is we definitely want to stay in this model of flexible work. We think it's great for all the reasons we talked about, but we also want to work together to figure out how to keep making it better for all of us. So I think we're now getting that conversation of, we do know we need to connect, but how do we do this so it works for all of us? I don't want to call tomorrow morning that I got to show up at the office the next day because I have a family, I have So how do we make time and space work for everybody? And it's a balance. So more to do, but yes, we're managing it. And I mean, we're measuring it constantly.
Great, thanks. Tom.
I guess thank you. I'll take an opportunity to ask one last question, admittedly unplanned, but one of the things I've done a lot of research on over the past several years and talked to many of our members about is internal mobility and this sort of shift to treating skills as sort of a new currency in organizations. Yep. So I know we didn't prep you with this kind of question, but I'm curious what you're doing on that front in terms of learning about the skills of all of your people, and then maybe there's a lot of these platforms called internal talent marketplaces. Where are you on that journey? Is that something you're looking to do?
If any of my team's listening, they're probably right now going, "Uh-oh, he's going to go crazy." So we totally shifted from a part of our whole org transformation is going from just time and job to really we want to focus on your skills and capabilities. So we're everything we do, to me, that's going to be the foundation of how we operate. Because if you think of any process in HR, capabilities and skills links to it. So we're
Right.
building out that foundation. We have a very simple concept. We want to know our talent, grow our talent, and connect our talent. And to know our talent, first thing we got to do is know your skills and capabilities. We then want to use this to really embed into our learning system. So we give you learning that matters into our career path and career growth. To me, career paths are, I mean, it's interesting to say you could have these 6 jobs, but we all know that's not, it's what's the next job? Where do you want to be? And so, and then how do I help you learn about other places that you may not want to be, you may not even know about? So how do I gain, based on what I know about you, how can I help you learn about other interests? You may be a marketing analyst that you never knew about being a treasury analyst, and because of your skills, that's what you want to do. So we're focused on that. And then the internal marketplace, we're doing something now where our recruiting team is actually, we're going to put technology in to do this, but they're manually just calling people internally. So we recruit our own employees. So our recruiting team will call employees, and just like you'd get a call from an external recruiter, and they would talk to them about a new job. That's a culture change. But to us, we want employees to know 2 things. We're looking out for you. We want you to grow. And we're trying to do that by learning more about you. Once we get the technology in the second half of the year, some of that will be automated. So I love this topic. So I'm like, it's but there's work to do. And I think in the community of HR, I think we're getting ourselves caught up in skills taxonomy. Who's got the right one? How could you do this?
Yeah.
There's so many groups out there doing this that I think we just got to land on. My advice to everybody is land on one. It's good enough, and just start the journey.
Yeah.
Because I think if we try to get it perfect, we'll be having the conversation in 10 years.
Yeah. And Jose, you're reading my mind, especially because I work so closely with TA leadership. How are the managers okay with recruiters picking up the phone and calling their team members? How does that work?
We have a policy. The manager doesn't get a vote. This is one, and I'll tell you why. We don't have our policy is every job is posted. And if you even don't have a posted job and you want a new job, you could do that. Because why am I restricting an employee and letting the manager say you can't go? Because what's that employee going to do? Going to pick up the phone, and if a recruiter outside can call you with no constraints, why am I constraining you inside? So we basically are living in an internal marketplace. And, do managers love it? No. If I have a really good employee that's going to go work for somebody else, that now made me have a burden.
Right.
But if we have a better option of keeping that employee and using them elsewhere and growing their career, that's a better outcome. So it's a different way of doing it, but we don't get tons of complaints, but
yeah,
it's
it is
definitely
a
different.
culture. It's a culture mindset shift. My research on this found that was the one area that companies that dove in first with a skills taxonomy and a platform and didn't address the culture and mindset shift, they regretted not having done so throughout the process.
Right.
You need to get your managers on board. It's an opportunity for managers to focus on the development of their people and do everything they can so that they want to stay on the team. And if the opportunities are elsewhere in the organization, better than outside the organization.
That's it. It's a system though, right? The system always controls it. And most employees think it's not true, and their manager is going to be upset. So you even have to get over that. So it takes time. We really got to build this system. But I think with everything that we're doing and with some of the tools and some of the technology, it's just as people start to see it, I'm always we could put the poster, but they got to see it and feel it. And that's why I give the recruiting team credit. They picked up the phone and started doing it, and it was great. They didn't wait.
Nice.
And it gets people talking.
And I think one of the things that Tom noted, or maybe it was our colleague Kevin Martin, that what you really want to do is praise those managers as developers of talent.
Yes.
And that in itself is a hallmark of a, high performing leader, is that they're a developer of talent. That's awesome. Your people are moving out of the team.
That's right. That's exactly it.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. Lorrie, I want to thank you. So many great questions, including many impromptu ones that we hadn't pre-planned. So thank you for that. And Bob,
they're better when they're not pre-planned. It's more
exactly. Yeah. Great conversation, Bob. Really appreciate it. We got a lot of folks in the chat that really love your concept of treating HR as a product organization, treating the services provided in that kind of way. They're even suggesting we should create more forums to apply that.
I'll be happy if you want to do another one day. I'll be happy. We could just do it session on that. I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, we will take you and your colleagues up on that for sure. I want to
Great.
close by noting that if you have a certification with HRCI or SHRM, just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID that you see on the screen and that Zeta put in the chat. Thank you for that, Zeta. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll see you again next Thursday. Until then, have a great rest of your week.
All right.